probably already know what to do. Let's be honest. Most people do. They've read the books. They've watched the videos. They've taken the courses. Yet their life hasn't changed. Why? Because knowing isn't enough. Understanding the path and walking the path are two very different things. The top 1% don't stop at insight. They weaponize it with action. They turn knowledge into power by applying it with relentless consistency. That's where transformation begins. That's how average people create exceptional lives. We live in a world drowning in information but starving for execution. Think about it. How many times have you said, I already know this? But if you really knew it, if it was part of your nervous system, wouldn't your results reflect it? The 1% don't chase more knowledge for the sake of feeling smart. They execute, they move, they build. See, success isn't about motivation. It's about momentum. The elite don't rely on feeling good. They build habits so strong that even when they're tired, even when they're frustrated, even when life gets heavy, they show up, they do the work because they've trained themselves to live by ritual, not reaction. That's a game changer. They also have something most people overlook: clarity. The top 1% don't just work hard. They know why they're working, what they're building, and how they'll get there. They don't confuse motion with progress. Clarity creates certainty, and certainty drives action. And when failure comes, and it always comes, they don't crumble. They don't personalize it. They extract the lesson. They recalibrate. They evolve. That's how the best rise while others retreat. Most people fail once and back down. The elite fail 10 times and come back stronger on the 11th. Not because they're superhuman, but because they've learned to interpret failure as feedback, not finality. But here's the real secret: emotional mastery. Knowing what to do and having the emotional strength to follow through. Those are two different skill sets. You can have the plan, but if you don't have the psychology, the hunger, the energy, you'll hesitate, procrastinate, and eventually quit. You must master your internal world. Train your state, because the person who controls their state controls their actions. And the person who controls their actions controls their destiny. Lastly, the top 1% don't hoard what they know. They live it, share it, and teach it. They understand that real knowledge is born in the trenches, by doing, by failing, by mentoring. That's how you internalize excellence. So if you've been reading, watching, listening, but not doing, it's time to draw the line. No more shelf help. No more living in the illusion of progress. It's time to apply. It's time to move. It's time to become the person your potential is waiting for. Because knowing isn't enough. Doing is where the magic happens. Most people today are addicted to information. They scroll endlessly through motivational quotes, watch countless videos, attend seminars, read books, and they feel a little spark. That spark feels like progress, like something inside them just shifted. But here's the raw truth: nothing changes until you act. You can know everything there is to know, but if you're not applying it, you're just mentally entertaining yourself. The separation between the top 1% and the rest isn't intelligence, talent, or access. It's execution. They do the thing. They apply what they learn. They live it. You see, there's a massive illusion in the world of personal growth that if you just know enough, you'll automatically do better. But it doesn't work that way. Knowledge is potential power. It only becomes real power when it's followed by action. The 1% understand this on a deep level. They don't fall in love with just learning. They fall in love with doing. They take what they know and implement it faster than everyone else. They don't need to read 10 more books to start a business. They start, they test, they adjust. While everyone else is still thinking, they're building. There's a dangerous comfort that comes with consuming information. It gives the illusion of growth. You feel smarter, more aware, more capable. But without application, it's just noise. The 1% have trained themselves to close that gap between learning and action. They don't wait to feel ready. They move when they have a spark, and they fuel it by doing. They build momentum through execution. That's why their lives change faster. That's why they rise, because they don't wait until everything is perfect. They start and they refine along the way. And here's the part most people miss. Execution is a muscle. The more you act on what you learn, the easier it becomes to keep acting. The 1% are not just smarter, they're more conditioned. They've built the habit of turning insight into implementation. They've trained themselves to be biased toward movement. While others analyze and overthink, they execute and evolve. They understand that success isn't found in endless preparation. It's earned in real time through real effort in the face of real resistance. So if you've been stuck in the loop of consuming without doing, now's the time to break it. Ask yourself honestly, what do I already know that I'm not using? What truth have I heard again and again but haven't acted on? That's your edge. That's your opportunity. Because the people who win aren't the ones who know the most. They're the ones who do the most with what they know. And that's a decision, a muscle, a commitment. Make it now. The people at the top don't wait around for motivation to show up. They understand that motivation is fleeting. It comes and goes like the weather. If they depended on it, they'd never get anything done. What separates them from the rest isn't their energy, excitement, or inspiration. It's their systems. It's their rituals. They've built habits so strong that action becomes automatic, not optional. The difference lies in how they've structured their lives to make progress non-negotiable. Average people wait until they feel like it. They wait until the stars align, until they're in the perfect mood, until conditions are just right. But the elite don't wait. They move whether they feel like it or not. They've wired themselves for consistency. That's how greatness is built. Through repetition, through ritual, through routines that function even on the hard days, especially on the hard days. Their mornings are intentional. Their environment is designed for performance. Their standards are set higher, and they've anchored their identity to those standards. It's not about hype, it's about rhythm. And here's the key. The rituals they follow aren't just about productivity. They're about identity. Every time they follow through on a system they've created, they reinforce the belief that they are the kind of person who follows through. That belief becomes unshakable. It compounds. And eventually it becomes who they are. It's not about doing something once with intensity. It's about doing it again and again with integrity. That's how they separate themselves. Not by random bursts of effort, but by a relentless pattern of execution. While the majority operate from emotion, the 1% operate from commitment. They don't leave their progress up to chance. They don't hope to be productive. They plan for it. They engineer their routines to work in their favor. They eliminate distractions before they appear. They set their priorities before the day even begins. That's how they win the morning. And when you win the morning, you win the day. There's no guessing, no hoping, just execution. And the truth is, anyone can do this, but most won't. Not because they're incapable, but because they're undisciplined. Discipline sounds harsh, but it's freedom in disguise. It frees you from the chaos of inconsistency. It removes the burden of decision fatigue. It gives you power over your time, your results, and ultimately your life. The 1% don't rely on discipline for everything. They've made it easier by building systems that carry the weight for them. So if you want to step into that next level, stop chasing motivation. It's nice when it comes, but it can't be trusted. Instead, build rituals, build structure, build a life that moves forward on autopilot, even when you don't feel like it. Because the people you admire, the ones who seem unstoppable, they're not powered by emotion. They're powered by systems that don't sleep. Success doesn't just happen. It's engineered through a combination of clear vision and aggressive, intentional action. The top 1% don't stumble into greatness. They design it. They don't waste time chasing scattered goals or vague dreams. They operate with absolute clarity. They know exactly what they want, why they want it, and what needs to happen to get there. That level of precision isn't luck. It's built through deep introspection and ruthless focus. When you're clear, distractions lose their power. Confusion fades. You stop drifting and start driving. Clarity is power. It creates momentum. When your mind isn't clouded by doubt or indecision, your energy goes straight into execution. That's what the elite understand. They don't ask themselves 20 different questions every day. They ask the right ones. What do I want? What's the outcome I'm committed to? What actions must I take today that move me closer to it? That's how they take massive steps forward when others are still stuck deciding which path to take. But clarity alone isn't enough. Action is the other side of the coin. Once the 1% have locked in on a goal, they move fast. They don't overthink. They don't wait for certainty or permission. They test, they try, they adjust. And even when they don't know all the steps, they trust themselves to figure it out along the way. The rest of the world waits for more information before starting. But the elite know that movement creates clarity just as much as clarity drives movement. You can't steer a parked car. They've conditioned themselves to act decisively. And here's what most people miss. Bold action isn't reckless. It's courageous. It's strategic. The elite take risks, but they take calculated risks. They move fast, but with intention. That's why they accelerate while others stall. They don't just dabble in possibilities, they commit to outcomes. They back their vision with the force of disciplined action. That's where the shift happens, from wishful thinking to real-world results. Another thing, the top 1% have learned to take action even when they don't feel fully ready. They don't need full confidence to start. They build it by starting. They move in spite of fear, not in the absence of it. Every time they act, they grow stronger, clearer, more certain. That's how they evolve at a different speed. Because clarity without action is useless. And action without clarity is chaotic. But when you fuse the two, you become unstoppable. If you want to elevate your life, stop living reactively. Get clear about what matters. Eliminate the noise and then move. Quickly, powerfully, and consistently. Because the people at the top don't have some secret code. They've simply mastered the art of turning clarity into action again and again until their life reflects exactly what they decided it would. Most people treat failure like a dead end. They hit a wall, and instead of asking what it's trying to teach them, they label it as defeat. But that's not how the top 1% operate. They see failure differently, not as something to fear, but as something to study. When things go wrong, they don't internalize it as I failed. They look at it as something failed. And that shift in mindset makes all the difference. They see failure as something failed is awesome. And that shift in mindset makes all the difference. Because when you remove your identity from the setback, you're free to extract the lesson and move forward with more wisdom than before. The elite know that failure is part of the process. It's not something to avoid, it's something to embrace. Every misstep is data. Every rejection is redirection. Every breakdown contains the blueprint for a breakthrough. That's why they bounce back faster. They don't spend days or weeks beating themselves up. They spend that energy figuring out what went wrong and how to improve it. They respond, not react. And that calm, strategic response is a habit that can be learned, but only if you stop taking failure personally. When average performers fail, they start questioning their worth. When high performers fail, they question their method. That's the key difference. The 1% are emotionally flexible. They don't attach failure to their value. They see it as feedback from reality. If something didn't work, it's not a life sentence. It's just a signal, a chance to shift direction, refine the plan, and come back smarter. Failure becomes their greatest teacher, not their greatest fear. The truth is, if you're trying to succeed without failing, you're not even playing the real game. You're playing to stay safe. And safety never creates greatness. Those at the top have taken more hits than most people are willing to try for. But each failure sharpened their edge. It didn't soften them, it forged them. And that's what makes them different. It's not that they failed less. It's that they kept showing up when it would have been easier to stay down. They built their resilience muscle by facing adversity and using it. It's also important to recognize that the faster you're willing to fail, the faster you'll find the path that works. Success is often hiding behind a series of wrong attempts. But if you stop after the first, second, or third try, you'll never reach the fourth, where everything clicks. The 1% are relentless, not because they love struggle, but because they trust that the solution is always within reach if they stay in motion and stay aware. So if you've hit a wall, if you've taken a hit, don't retreat, reflect. Ask yourself what the experience is trying to teach you. What did you miss? What can you refine? Because the only real failure is the failure to learn. And when you start using every fall as fuel, there's no limit to how far you can rise. Most people think success is only about strategy, what to do, when to do it, how to do it. But the truth is, none of that matters if your emotional state is working against you. You can have the perfect plan, the right tools, the best mentors, but if you're consumed by fear, doubt, or overwhelm, you'll hesitate, you'll stall, you'll sabotage your own momentum. The top 1% understand this at a deep level. They've mastered the emotional game because they know that execution starts from the inside out. If you don't command your emotions will command your life. Every single day, emotions shape the quality of your decisions. The state you're in determines whether you attack the day or avoid it, whether you lean into discomfort or run from it, whether you take that bold action or sit in silence hoping for clarity to magically arrive. High achievers don't leave their emotional state to chance. They condition it, they prime it, they protect it. They know that if they can control how they feel, they can control how they perform. That's why morning routines, visualization, breath work, physical movement, or incantations aren't just routines. They're rituals that condition peak emotional states. These tools anchor them in confidence, certainty, and focus before the day even starts. Because if you begin your day in stress, fear, or scarcity, that lens colors everything. But when you start from a place of power, gratitude, and clarity, the same challenges look like opportunities, not obstacles. The top 1% don't wait for life to make them feel good, they create it. And emotional mastery isn't about being positive all the time. It's about emotional intelligence. It's about awareness and regulation, knowing when your state is off and having the tools to shift it. The most successful people aren't immune to frustration, sadness, or fear. They've just trained themselves to bounce back fast. They don't stay stuck. They interrupt the pattern. They ask better questions. They move their body. They shift their focus. They break the emotional loop before it turns into a spiral. Ultimately, your emotions are the fuel behind your actions. You don't procrastinate because you're lazy. You procrastinate because your emotional state is wired to avoid pain. You don't quit because you're weak. You quit because in that moment, your emotions outweigh your drive. When you master your emotions, you take back control. You stop being reactive. You become intentional. That's the true foundation of execution. Not willpower, but emotional power. So if you want to execute at a higher level, don't just focus on doing more. Focus on being more. Learn to shift your state at will. Learn to access your inner fire even on the darkest days. Because when your emotions are aligned with your mission, action becomes automatic. And once you master the emotional game, everything else begins to fall into place. There's a massive difference between knowing something and owning it. Reading, listening, even understanding a concept, none of that guarantees it will impact your life. What transforms knowledge into power is application. And even more than that, sharing and teaching it. The top 1% don't just learn for themselves. They apply what they learn and then they multiply it by pouring it into others. Because when you teach something, you don't just reinforce it intellectually, you embody it emotionally, physically, and practically. That's where mastery begins. Think about the last powerful insight you gained. Did you write it down? Did you take action on it? Did you teach it to someone else? Most people collect ideas like trophies, something to admire but never use. But the elite know that unused knowledge is dead weight. They don't hoard wisdom, they activate it. And they don't keep it to themselves. When you teach, you solidify your understanding. You're forced to simplify it, to speak it with clarity, to live it with integrity. That reflection is what makes the lesson part of who you are. You'll often see that the most successful performers, leaders, and thinkers aren't just doers. They're mentors. They're constantly passing on what they've learned, not because they're trying to be experts, but because they know that contribution deepens retention. That process of teaching turns a one-dimensional idea into a lived experience. They know that every time they give what they've gained, they also grow. It's not about ego, it's about evolution. And it creates ripple effects. When your knowledge improves someone else's life, your understanding of it transforms into wisdom. The top 1% are obsessed with implementation. They test everything. They take ideas from books or mentors and put them to work immediately. That's the difference. They're not waiting for the perfect time to start using what they know. They apply and adjust in real time. Every lesson becomes a tool. Every tool becomes a habit, and every habit becomes a standard. That's how they move so quickly. While others are still thinking about the theory, they're living the result. And most importantly, they understand this. What you don't apply, you eventually forget. The brain doesn't hold on to unused knowledge. It discards it. But when you act on an idea, when you teach it, when you live it, you etch it into your nervous system. It becomes second nature. That's why so many people feel like they know so much, yet see no progress. Because knowing without doing is the same as not knowing at all. So if you truly want to grow, apply what you know immediately. Don't just keep it in your head. Put it in your calendar, your routine, your conversations. Teach it to a friend. Share it with someone struggling. Use it in your business, in your relationships, in your daily decisions. Because mastery doesn't belong to the person who reads the most. It belongs to the one who uses, lives, and multiplies what they know. That's how knowledge becomes real. That's how lives are changed.